This is the third session of AWS DevOps. In previous two sessions, we did the deployment of VPC, different components, by using the AWS console. But in professional life, it is not recommended to use the direct web console to perform all these activities. In professional life, we must have to use some infrastructure as code, just like Terraform. So, in this series of AWS DevOps, I will do I will explain you first of all the concepts of different components of AWS first by Web Console, and then we will implement the same concept by the Terraform. So today we have to understand how we can set up the Terraform on our machine, and then we will use the same Terraform then we will use the Terraform that is infrastructure as a code to deploy the same stuff whatever we did with our uh, web console. So these are the steps we must have to perform in order to set up the Terraform on our machine. So first we have to download and install the Terraform. So we have to go, I will go to my search engine here, just search for Terraform download. So it will this is the link from where you can download the Terraform. Terraform is basically provided by the HashiCorp. And Terraform, if you go to the main page of the Terraform HashiCorp, you can see Terraform is basically a tool, infrastructure as code that let you build a change and variant infrastructure safely and efficiently. So you can manage a lot of clouds by using Terraform. It is not specifically designed for AWS. This is as an infrastructure as code that is supporting almost all well-known cloud providers. So we have to download it and we have to set up it. So if you are working on Mac OS, you can download with this way. If you are working on Linux, you can download it this way. But we are using Windows. So you can simply click on this download link and it will download the Terraform. Go to the location where it is downloaded. It is a zip file. Just see inside this zip file, this is the terraform.exe. This terraform.exe is not an installable file, and it will give you some UI based application interface. It is just a command. So just like we have binaries in Linux, so you can put the binaries in the path variable of the path variable, and then that binary will become the command of your operating system. So this binary file you have to place in the path of your whatever OS you are using. I'm using Windows, so I will use the environment variable of my machine, environment variables, system variables, and here you can edit. Sorry, here you can select the path, and these are all the paths where you can put the binary. And system sometimes system is creating these paths and sometimes you have to, so you can create directory anywhere. I created this directory under the program files Terraform, and I just put the downloaded binary of Terraform at this location. That is done. So now Terraform is a command that is runnable by our operating system. This is done. Now what we will test the Terraform command, Terraform hyphen hyphen variant. So you can see Terraform is available. If you do a tab terraform.exe hyphen hyphen variant is also giving us the same output. So Terraform has become a command on our machine and Terraform is installed. But there are some other dependencies too to run Terraform on your machine. So this was the first step. The another step is we have to understand the IAM, Identity Access Manager of AWS, where we will create the user and we will allow some limited permissions on that user to perform that specific activity. So now I will go to my AWS. I will go to my IAM under the users, create user. I will create a user like DevOps 1. Select this checkbox if you want to allow that user to log in by AWS console. Otherwise, the user can only work by AWS CLI. So I will just allow to show you how this will work. Select I want to create IAM user. I will create some custom password. And on the next login, you can enforce the user to change the password, but I am just unselecting this. But you should select this in your professional life so that the user can change the password at very first login. So here, next step is to set some permissions or assign some groups. I'm not going to assign this user any group. I'm not going to copy any permission. I just have to attach the policy. So there are 1312 built-in policies created by AWS for the different resources of different types. We can also create our own policy too. And if I just expand any of the policy, you can see this is just a very simple JSON format policy. There is a special JSON code uh, that will make the provisioning of different resources. You can compare this access policies with Kubernetes. We discussed in the Kubernetes about role-based access control and where we created the roles. So in the roles, we define the resources and different operations we can perform on the resources, and then we attach those roles with the users. So same is the way that we are going to do here. Think like this is a role. These are all the roles. So for example, I want to make this user the full administrator of VPC. So I just write VPC. All the VPC related policies are listed here. Now you can see Amazon VPC full access. Just like this, mean this user can perform all the activities on the VPC level. You can make this user read only VPC, whatever you want to do, but I am just making this user here to perform everything related to VPC because we want to implement the same stuff what we did in our first two sessions by web console by the infrastructure as code using Terraform. So I selected this. Next, policy attached, create user. So user is created. This is a password you can view. This is our account ID. If you drop down, you can see 0011528. So this is my account ID. You can directly use this link to log in on this user, uh, and you can provide this username password. So let me go to my different browser. So now I am on the AWS login console. On login console, either I can directly log in by root user or I can log in by the IAM user. To log in with the IAM user, I must have to provide the ID. This is the ID I can use. If you just copy paste this whole link, this will give you the ID inside the browser too. Here, and it is asking me the username. We created the DevOps one. Password I provided. Sign in. And here you can see this user is logged in. Okay, now this user can only do the administration of VPC. If I try to do any other activity, it will give me the error. Just like quickly, I will show you EC2. It is trying to create an EC2 instance. Some test instance it is trying to launch. Key pair and some AMI it will show us. So yeah, as you can see, it is not able to browse the AMIs. And if it will try to create any launch the instance, for example, I will create a key pair. So it is not even allowed to create the key pair. So the resources are not reachable to this user. Okay. So, but this user can perform anything within the VPC. Just let me just go inside the VPC. I am in US West 2 region, and here under the VPC, this user can see. You can see this user can see the VPCs, subnets, route tables, internet gateway, everything, and it can delete and create anything. So now the second task is also done. Create a user with only VPC access. So now you got the idea how AM is working, how we can create the user, and how we can attach a specific uh, policy to that specific user. Now the third step uh, is we create access key for the IAM user. So why we create this IAM user? We can use the root user to attach with the Terraform to work, but root user is not recommended to use. We must have to make some IAM user with the limited access rights so that the user should work in its specific domain of in its specific domain. So create access key. So why we want to create the access key? In fact, Terraform is using the AWS CLI, and by using the AWS CLI, Terraform will connect with the cloud, and then it will perform all the activities. So just like we as a human are using web console to perform all the activities, so Terraform will use the AWS CLI. AWS CLI will use the AWS API and to connect with the AWS resources. And for that reason, and the AWS CLI is not going to use some username password based access, it will use the token based access. So whenever we are going to create a user, we must have to generate the access key to connect with the AWS CLI. So before generating this access key, we have to install the AWS CLI. So AWS CLI, just type on your search engine, you will get the documentation page from the Amazon, and here it will give us the complete detail, the installation process of AWS CLI. What is AWS CLI exactly? So AWS CLI, we can administrate our whole AWS by using the command line. Just like in the Linux, we can perform all the activities by command line. We can do anything by the command line. And but we can, if we install the Linux by some desktop environment, we can also use the desktop tools. But the professional way is to use the command line. Similarly, AWS CLI you can also use to perform the AWS administration. To install the AWS CLI, either Linux, Mac OS, or Windows, so you can just go to Windows. You just have to download this MSI and you can install it, or you can simply run this command and it will install the AWS CLI on your machine. So I already did this activity. This is not a difficult job. You will just run this command. It will pop up some window and you just have to click next, next, and it will install the AWS CLI. After the completion of AWS CLI, in, in your environment variables, it will create a path for the AWS CLI. And that path, this path you see, is automatically created by the AWS CLI installer, and under this path it will install all these files, and here is the actual binary that we will use in the command line to connect with our AWS CLI. So the Terraform will use AWS CLI to connect with the AWS to perform the activities. So now if I go to my CMD after the installation and I just look for AWS variant, so I will be able to see the AWS variant 2.22. This is the latest variant. This is the Python variant along with AWS CLI already is also installed. So AWS CLI is there. Now we created the user. Now it's time to create the access key that will be used with the AWS CLI to provide the authentication whenever we want to query to AWS by using command line. So to generate the access key, I have to go to users, the user I created, the security credential. Here are the access keys. Click on create access key. So the purpose of access key, you can see it is asking command line for AWS CLI, local code application running on AWS compute service, third party. So our purpose is for AWS CLI. I understand. Next. And you can provide some tag, create access key, and this key is generated. So you can say this is the access key and this is the secret access key. If someone got access these two values of your account, they can easily access your account. So make sure these are not reachable by anyone. Make them secret. You can also download a CSV because only one time you can see this secret key. When you will click on done, you cannot see this access key next time. So either you will save this CSV file, it will save both of these values, or you can just copy first time from here and then click on done. But the question is where we have to save these values. So here we have to write AWS configure. So AWS configure command is used to provide these to save these two values in our system. While AWS will try to hit AWS API, it will use these credentials token to make the authentication on AWS console. Not the console, mean AWS API. This I entered. Here you can define the region, the default region you want to use. Later on you can also change. For example, I just use this US West 2, or you can use anyone. So I just use this output format. I don't want to specify. So this is done. Now these credentials, the tokens are saved. The question is where it is saved. Go to your console, your user profile, users under the AWS. So under your user, with what user you use to run this CMD, go to that user and under the AWS hidden directory, and in this hidden directory you will see these two files, credentials and configs. Just open the credentials and you can see the credentials. So whatever you save in your file. So here, this file is very critical. You must have to save this file. You will not share this file with anyone. And then in the config, you can define your region. So you can change your region, just like we are changing our region. From here, we are jumping to different region. So when you are connecting with the AWS CLI, so you can simply provide this name, just like AP Northeast 3. Okay, so I just use no US West 2. Any region you can use. Okay, this is done. Now we will go to our command line, and here we have to run some command to query AWS. So let me just review whatever we did. So we install the AWS CLI. We create the access key from for the AMI user. Add AWS IAM user access key using AWS configure command. And this is the same way on Linux too. If you run on Linux, you will use the same command, AWS configure. It will ask for the key and token, and then you can provide. And then the verify the access is working fine by running some AWS commands. So now you can do the complete AWS administration by using AWS CLI. And the token I attach for the user DevOps one. And you know the DevOps users can only perform within the domain of VPC. Okay, you can also create this access key and secret for root user, but it is not recommended to use that specific user, root user. That could be a security threat for you. So I can run AWS, for example, EC2 help. So to manage EC2, I can run some commands. So here you can see or all the commands, all the queries I can do by command line, by the command line. But I am just interested in find str, for example, VPC. Okay, str. So this is the Windows. Just like in Linux, we are using grep. In Windows, we are using find str. So here you can see there is a describe VPCs. If I run, sorry, if I run VPCs, so it will give us the output of the EC2, I mean VPCs for EC2. This is the information of the VPC for the region whatever we selected. So if I switch my region, it will give me some different information. So in last session, we use US West 2 I think no, this is North California. So I will just see either those resources are available. And here I will, in the AWS config, I will modify the region to US West 1. So here I go to my VPC. So in our previous session, we created some resources inside our VPC. So this VPC we created. So now let me run the same command again. This time I change my region in the config file. It is connecting with the AWS API with the credential, and now you can see it is giving the different information. Okay, so with AWS CI we can do anything. We can create any resource, we can list any resource, we can write the AWS related, we can write some script, batch script, or in Linux bash script to perform the AWS administration. But using AWS CLI is not recommended to manage all the AWS resources. It is very difficult to manage. We can manage, but it is difficult to write the code. It is just for the quick review, just we want to list down the subnets or any specific resources. AWS CLI is good, but to create the resources, it is recommended to use the Terraform. Now, uh, we have to we verify that AWS is working fine. It is giving us the output, and now we have to install the Visual Studio. Visual Studio code we can download. So you will search for Video Studio code, and you will download the Visual Studio code for Windows and simply install it. This is not a difficult job. Visual Studio will give us the leverage of writing Terraform code, and it will help us to write the Terraform code. Mostly developers are using this tool, but since we are working on infrastructure as code, so we are also going to write the code to manage our AWS. So Visual Studio Code is already I installed. I'm just opening the Visual Studio Code. It is opened. So I will show you how you can work in AWS in Visual Studio Code. I just wrote some Terraform uh, related stuff. But in next session, I will show you how we can understand the Terraform code. But here, this is a tool that is quite friendly to write the code. We can open some file from any directory and we can start editing. What is the benefit of using Visual Studio Code? You will get the better idea when we will start working with the Terraform code writing using Visual Studio Code. So best thing is it is providing us the extensions. So there are a lot of extensions available, just like if you want to write the PHP or Python or Java, any language you want to write, you can download the extension of that specific language, and it will help you to write down the code and help you this with the suggestions, whatever you are writing. So we want to work in the Terraform. So there are some extensions available for Terraform by different vendors. So I will recommend you to use this HashiCorp Terraform extension. I already installed this. You will see here the install option. You will just click it, it will install. And then this extension will be available and you can start using this extension to writing the Terraform code. So in next session, we will see how to write the Terraform code. We will understand the syntax. We will perform the complete VPC deployment along with the EC2 instances, whatever we did by using the Terraform. So I hope you got the idea what we did. So just we perform all these activities, and you must have to be familiar with these concepts. So you must have to go through the previous videos before going with this session.